Hello again and welcome to Apple a Day. Today's episode is a detailed tutorial on how to use some of the logic functions when creating formulas in numbers as well as in tables when you're using pages. I'm only going to cover 3 functions today, but what you're going to learn can certainly be applied to others. The functions I will be covering are SUMIF, SUMIFS, and COUNTBLANK. So let's get started. By the way, if you want to follow along with the same document I'm using, you can download it from the DropBox link supplied in the description. Okay, so first, let's take a look at the document I already have open. So to save time, I've already set up the 3 tables I'm going to use, and the log table on the left has already been pre-filled with data. So this log table contains records detailing an employee's workday. I've made it easier to create entries by using pop-up menus for the type, the customer, and the priority. So selecting priority, you can see there's a drop-down arrow right there, and the same thing for customer, as well as type. So going back to priority, I can go over to the right and choose cell, and you can see the data format is set to pop-up menu, and here are all the settings that I have in this particular pop-up menu. Notice that I've set the default value to blank, and that's the start with blank option. You can have it start with the first item if you like, but for priority, we want it to be blank because some of the log types don't necessarily need a priority in our example. As you can see, some are blank. Of course, if you go over to type, and you can see the pop-up menu on the right changes to show the different types that I've set up. You can easily add new ones, you're hitting the plus, or remove ones that are there by selecting it and clicking on minus. Now here I got this set to start with first item because every single log entry has to have at least one type, so it forces the selection of something when you have it set to start with first item. Now these 2 tables on the right are already set up to display the totals for the type and the priority, and this bottom one will display hours per day based on type. Right now they're empty, so we're going to go back to the log table, and the first thing we're going to do is a simple sum formula. So I'm going to select the cell in the time column under the last log entry for November 15th, which is right here. So I want to create a formula here that will sum all of the hours above it. There are several ways to do this. You can create a new formula by selecting Insert from the toolbar and then choosing New Formula. Then I'm going to type in sum and opening bracket, which is Shift 9. So what this is doing, it's creating a formula, like a function, that is going to sum whatever I have inside these 2 brackets. So we need to tell it which cells we're going to sum. So the best way to do that is simply to click on the first cell right here. So you can see how it highlights it and creates handles. I'm going to grab this bottom right handle and just drag it down. And when I'm finished, I can either click on the check mark or press return. And there you have it, our first sum. So let's go down to the next date, November 16th, and select the empty cell. So to calculate the sum here, I'm going to show you a different way. Instead of going up to the Insert toolbar, you can just press equals on the keyboard. And that does the same thing. It creates a blank formula. So I'm going to type in sum again, opening bracket, and select the range of cells. Click, and then drag. And I'm just going to press return, and there's my sum there. Now for the bottom section, I'm going to show you a third way to do it. I'm actually going to select all of the cells ahead of time that I want to sum. So I've already got the first cell highlighted that I want to sum, and you can see it's got 2 little tiny handles on the cell. I'm going to click on that and drag until I have all the cells selected. Another way to do it, I'm just going to click out of here and go back, is to hold down the Shift key and select the bottom cell, and it highlights the whole range. Same thing. Now if you look at the bottom of the numbers window, you'll see it's got some shortcuts for sum, average, minimum, maximum, and count. So all you got to do is click on sum and drag it to the cell that you want to store it in. So I'm going to put it right here. And that does the same thing as what we've done before. If I double click on it or click again, it shows you the sum function with the specified range of cells, just like before. So that's 3 different ways that you can create the same formula. That's all we need to do for the first table. So now we're going to use the SUMIF function. So SUMIF is used to sum a group of cells based on a set of criteria. So in this example, I want to sum the time spent, but only for log entries with a type set to development. So basically the formula would say sum this column if the value in this column contains the word development. So I've got the cell selected. I'm going to type in equals to bring up the formula. So over on the right, you'll see that once you're in the formula editor, you've got a little helper over here, which gives you the details on every single function that's in the system. So I'm going to type in SUMIF, and you'll see we've got SUMIF and SUMIFS, and of course SUM, which we've already covered. So selecting SUMIF, you can see the instructions down here. Now, even though it explains things thoroughly, I found that the documentation in Numbers, it can be very confusing for a beginner. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to create this tutorial. If I double click on SUMIF, what it'll do is create the function within my formula editor. This is the formula editor here. So if I double click on it, it'll create the function and show me the placeholders for the parameters. So I double clicked and there we go. So we've got SUMIF, test values, condition, and sum values. So the sum values is going to be the hours. This is the values that we're going to sum. We want to sum the hours. The test values is this type column, and we want to test for the word development. If the type is equal to development, we will include the hours in the sum. And the condition parameter specifies the test, meaning we're looking for the word development. So let's start this out. So let's select test values. It actually already was selected when it was darker. So let me click on it again. So test values is selected. So I'm just going to go and click on the top of the column to select the entire column. And that's done. And I'm going to jump over to sum values and click on the time column. So that's done. So now we have to enter in the condition. So the condition needs to be enclosed in quotes. So I'm going to type in shift quote to get the double quotes. It has to be the double quotes. And I'm going to type in equals and then the word development. And then close the quotes with a shift quote again. Now the word development, even though it's text, does not need to appear in quotes. The entire condition statement has to be in quotes. From a programming standpoint, normally you would put a bunch of characters like the word development inside its own set of quotes, but you don't do that here. So to commit the formula and close the formula editor, I'm just going to press return. And there you go. We've got 15 hours in development. So if you were to go down this list and add up every time it says development, like so it would be 0.5 plus 0.275 plus 0.225, etc. That would add up to 15 hours. So let's do the same thing for support. I'm going to do this the easy way and copy the formula that we just created by selecting that cell and pressing Command-C to copy. And then I'm going to paste it in the support cell by pressing Command-V. And notice that it still says 15, which is either a big coincidence or we still have something else to do. So if I click on the cell again, it opens up the formula editor and we've got the type column and the time column. Those are accurate. But what's different is the condition is set to development still. Obviously it didn't change just because we copied and pasted it. So we have to change the word development to support. Press return and that's done. 4.25 hours for support. I'm going to quickly do the rest of these. I'm just going to copy the formula into each cell and then change the condition to the type name. Okay, so that's SUMIF. Now we're going to go on to SUMIFS. That's IFS. So what's the difference between SUMIF and SUMIFS? Well, SUMIFS can have multiple tests or checks within the function. I suppose that's why if is plural. So we have a real-world scenario here that will make use of SUMIFS. So over here in this cell, I want to sum all of the time spent on development items that also have the priority set to urgent. So that's two checks. The type has to match the word development, and the priority has to match the word urgent. Because it's two checks, we need to use SUMIFS. You can't do it with just SUMIF. Now the syntax is slightly different than SUMIF, where the first parameter was test values. With SUMIFS, the first parameter is the sum values, followed by one or more pairs of test values and conditions. So I'm already in the development and urgent cell. I'm going to press the equal sign to bring up the formula editor. Now the last search is still here, so I'm going to double click on SUMIFS. So you can see it already fills in the formula editor with SUMIFS. And like I just said, the sum values is the first parameter. It's already selected, so let's go over to time and select the top of that column. And then we're going to do the first test value. So we'll select test values and select the type column. And under condition, we'll type in equals development, just like we did last time. So I'm going to do shift quote for the double quotes, equals the word development, close the quotes. And instead of closing the formula right now, I'm going to type a comma. And as soon as I do that, it's going to create another parameter of test values. So it's already selected. I'm going to go over to priority and select that column. Now we need to give it a condition to check for the priority column. So type in another comma, and you'll see the condition comes up. I'm going to type in shift quote equals and the word urgent. Close the quotes. And now we're done. So you can see I'm summing the time column if the type is equal to development and the priority is equal to urgent. If I hit return, it gives me 3 hours. Now we can probably check this just to make sure. So I'm going to look for the word urgent, and there's urgent, but that's support, so that's not added in. Here's urgent for development. Oh, 3 hours there. Got another urgent, but that's support, and that's it. So it only summed to this one cell, which is 3 hours. So let's do the same thing for same day. So I'm going to select the development urgent cell, press Command C, and go over to development same day, and press Command V to paste it. And whoa, what's that? I got a warning triangle. So something got messed up. And if you look over to the left, you can see that the cells shifted. So if I go back and select the development urgent cell, you'll see that it's got time hours, type, and priority selected. And if I click over here again, it's got type, customer, and nothing else. So what's happened is the whole thing is shifted over. And that's typical in any spreadsheet. If you take a formula and apply it to another column, and that column is adjacent by one column, the cells used in the formula get bumped by one column as well. And normally that makes things easier. Obviously this time it's not what we want. Now there's a quick way to fix that. So I'm just going to undo this. I'm going to go back to the development urgent cell, click on it again to bring up the formula. Each of these ranges has a little drop down arrow next to them. So if I click on the time range, I want to preserve the column. In other words, I don't want to move the column if I copy and paste this into another column. So I'm going to click on preserve column here. I'm going to do the same thing for type and again for priority. And press return to close it. And then make sure the cell is selected. Press Command C to copy it. Go over to the same day column, press Command V. And now I have the same number of 3. Now, we know because of before, when we copy one of these formulas, the text within the formula does not miraculously change. It still says development and urgent, so we need to change that. So development is okay, but urgent is what we need to change. So highlighting urgent, I'm just going to type in same day and press return. And now we've got 5¼ hours for anything that was development with a priority of same day. And again, we can check that. So we got half an hour here, 2¼ hours there, so that's 2.75. And another 2.5 down here, so that's 2.75 plus 2.5, that's 5¼ And the other same days are for support. So we know this formula is working. It's doing exactly what we want. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it into next day and 2 days and just quickly edit them. So if this happens where it goes off screen, you can just go over to the left side of the formula editor until the cursor turns it into a hand, and I can drag it so I can see what I'm doing. So instead of same day, we want to change that to 2 days, press return. There. Now we have the total hours for all the different priorities for development. So now we're going to do the same thing for support. But instead of doing one column at a time, I'm going to select all 4 cells, press Command C and Command V to paste them in. So I'm going to go to the formula for each one of these and change development to support. Now it doesn't look like I have anything for next day or 2 days for support. So let's give it some values. So let's say I made a mistake here. So under November 17th on this particular entry, I've got administrative. I actually meant to set that to support. So I'm going to do that right now. And I'm going to change the priority for that to 2 days. And as soon as I do that, you should see a half an hour appear under 2 days. And there it is. And that's what's great about spreadsheets. Whenever you change a value in one location, if that particular cell is accessed by a formula somewhere else, everything just updates instantly. We don't need to do this for phone calls, lunch breaks, miscellaneous, or administrative, because in this example, none of those log types would have a priority. So the last thing I want to do in this table is to sum the columns. So I'll select the first cell, hold the Shift key down, and select the last cell, and that chooses the whole range. I'm going to drag over the sum shortcut from the bottom, right into here. And now we have that column summed. I'm going to select that sum cell and copy it, Command C. And then I'm going to paste it in under the urgent column, as well as under same day, next day, and 2 days. Now, as you can see, it did what we wanted it to do. This is where you want the columns to shift or move with each copied formula. Here it makes sense. We made the sum here, and when we copied it over by one cell, it also copied the formula range by one cell, and again and again. Okay, so that's it for the type and the priority totals. The last thing we're going to do is the hours per day. This last table is going to display the number of hours spent per day for each log type. And now in order to do that, we need to know the number of days. The obvious approach to this would be just to select the day column and count the number of unique entries. So November 5th counts as one, November 16th another, and November 17th a third. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, Numbers does not have a count unique function like other products do, Excel. But luckily, because of the way this table is set up, if you look at it, because each set of dates has a summary row, and that row happens to have a blank cell for each day, I know that if I count the number of blank cells, that's going to give me the number of days. Obviously, that only works if you set up something in this scenario. But because it's my example, that's how I choose to do it for this demonstration. So going back over to the hours per day table, I'm going to click on total days. I'm going to press the equal sign, and I'm going to type in the name of the function, which is COUNTBLANK. Press Shift 9 to create the opening bracket. And then I'm going to just choose the column and just press return. And there you have it. 3 days. If I were to add more days, as long as I keep putting in a summary row for each day and where it's blank under the date, that would automatically count the correct number of days. Now this cell, which is a formula to determine the number of days, that's going to be used in all the subsequent cells in this table. So we want to know how many development hours are spent per day, and that's a simple division of the development hours up here, which is 15, divided by the total number of days, which is 3. So let's do that. So if I go into development and I type in equals, I'm going to go up here and click on the development hours under the all column, and that's 15. I'm going to type in the forward slash, which is the division. And even though I typed in a forward slash, it shows a divide symbol. And then I'm going to click on total days and press return. That shows me 5. By the way, I've already got this pre-formatted to show only 2 decimal points. By default, a number would show many, many decimal points. But if you want to make that easier to read, just go under the Cell tab down to Data Format and type in the number of decimals to 2, like I did in this example. Okay, so now I'm going to select that formula. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it into support. So something strange happened. Again, because I moved over to the right 1 column, it changed the selected column up in Table and Priority Totals over to the Urgent column. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to undo that. Go back to this formula, click on it. So I'm going to lock this column so it stays under the All column. I'm going to hit Preserve Column. And A2, which is the total days, I'm going to lock that column as well. Try this one more time. Command C to copy. Select Support. Command V. There we go. But something's still not right. So it's got the total days right, but it's still selecting development. We have to manually change that. All I got to do is click on it to bring up the formula editor, and then just go grab that cell and drag it down 1. Copy it again, paste it, do the same thing. Paste it in again, edit it, move it down to there, and one more time. And there you have it, averages of time spent per day for each log type. Okay, so that's all I'm going to go over today. I hope this was helpful as a starting point for applying logic to formulas. Two other useful functions that also use the if command are COUNTIF and AVERAGEIF, and they work the same way. And remember that these same functions also work in pages when you're working with tables. If you have any questions on the formula editor, or you would like to see a tutorial on a specific formula function, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching this tutorial. My name is John Martins. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time on Apple a Day.